He was taller than people think.
Oh.
That's for sure. People
How
think
tall was he?
he was 6 foot. 6 foot.
Really?
A little more. A little bit more than 6 foot. Yes.
What would you do if you lost your father before you could remember him, your husband to the world's spotlight, your grandson at 27, and your only daughter 3 years later? How does a 14-year-old girl who meets the king of rock and roll transform into a business mogul who saves his empire from collapse? And when your own face becomes unrecognizable because of a stranger's betrayal, how do you find the courage to face millions of cameras again? This is the story of Priscilla Presley, a woman whose name echoes through American history not because she married Elvis Presley, but because she survived what would have destroyed anyone else. May 24, 1945, Brooklyn, New York. As World War II gasped toward its final breath, a baby girl entered a world that would never give her stability. Priscilla Ann Wagner was held only once by her father, Navy pilot James Frederick Wagner, before duty pulled him back into the sky. His aircraft went down in the fragile months that followed. There was no final goodbye, no memory for her to cling to, only a folded flag and a silence so enormous it swallowed their home whole. I never knew the sound of his voice, she would later confess. Only the echo of a man I lost before I could remember him. Her mother, Ann, married Air Force officer Paul Ballio in 1948 when Priscilla was just 3. By age 10, she had already lived in Maine, Texas, Connecticut, and New Mexico. By 13, she was uprooted again and flown across the Atlantic to Wiesbaden, Germany. Every move meant another bedroom stripped bare, another version of herself abandoned before she could grow fully into it. Everything I loved, we left behind, she would recall, a confession revealing the emotional cost of a childhood lived in constant motion. But here's what nobody tells you about loss: sometimes it's preparing you for something even bigger. Priscilla was 14 years old, sitting in a house in Bad Nauheim, Germany, when destiny walked through the door. Elvis Presley, 24, magnetic and famous beyond comprehension, lifted his head and looked directly at her. The room shifted into impossible stillness. She felt small, exposed, terrified of being noticed. Her hands trembled. She could barely breathe. Within days, whispers spread like wildfire. Soldiers traded glances, young women stiffened. Who is she? Why her? By 1962, when she moved to America at 16, the world had already written a script for her she never auditioned for. But here's the brutal truth: the more the world admired her connection to Elvis, the more invisible she became to herself. He shaped her appearance, the dark-lined eyes, the sky-high hair, the polished dresses, until she no longer recognized the girl in the mirror. She lived those years, she would later confess, as though watching a film about someone else, wondering where her own desires ended and the expectations of millions began. Yet something extraordinary was happening beneath that surface. She was learning the discipline of poise, the language of fame, the art of surviving in the shadow of a legend, skills she would desperately need in the years ahead. Their wedding in 1967 felt like a breath held between two heartbeats. When Lisa Marie arrived in February 1968, Elvis wept openly, buying his daughter tiny fur coats, naming his private jet after her. For a brief golden season, it seemed they had outrun every shadow. But as the 1970s tightened around them, fame became a third presence in their marriage, loud, ravenous, merciless. Elvis was consumed by tours and filming. Priscilla wandered the endless halls of Graceland, those grand corridors now feeling more like a labyrinth she couldn't escape. Magazine covers hinted at on-set chemistry. Columnists framed his co-stars as potential lovers. "Who am I when I am not standing beside him?" she wrote in a diary hidden beneath folded sweaters. And here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. When she found karate as an escape, she discovered her own strength for the first time in years. Her instructor, Mike Stone, noticed what she tried to hide: the weariness, the tremor in her voice when she said she was fine. What formed between them wasn't passion, but the quiet acknowledgement of everything she could no longer deny about her marriage. In 1973, after 6 years of marriage, 38-year-old Elvis and 27-year-old Priscilla signed divorce papers in a room heavy with everything they survived and everything they couldn't. When the documents were gathered, they rose and took each other's hands, letting go not because love had vanished, but because it had run out of space to breathe. August 16, 1977. The world lost the king of rock and roll. But Priscilla lost the young soldier who once wrote trembling letters from Germany, the man who played piano softly until dawn when she couldn't sleep, the father of her child. I wasn't ready to lose him, she admitted in a voice barely above a whisper. Not even after everything. Standing in a sterile hospital hallway, fluorescent lights flickering above, a doctor approached slowly and met her eyes. His soft, solemn shake of the head struck her like a physical blow. Not him. Not now, she whispered into her hands, her voice cracking like something inside her had snapped in two. More than 80,000 mourners flooded Memphis streets. The golden casket draped in white roses glowed beneath muted lights. And when 9-year-old Lisa Marie looked up with confusion no child should carry and whispered, "Is Daddy coming home?" Priscilla's heart split cleanly, mercilessly. But grief, as she would discover, was just beginning its work. In 1982, when Priscilla announced she would open Graceland to the public, critics predicted humiliation. They said she would ruin the estate. On opening day, hidden behind a velvet curtain, she clasped her hands so tightly the bones ached, praying she was honoring him. What happened next stunned everyone. Graceland became the second most visited home in America, drawing over 700,000 visitors annually and dragging the Presley estate back from financial ruin. The woman the world assumed would fade became the guardian who saved an empire. She stepped into acting with Dallas in 1983. The Naked Gun films in the late 1980s revealed the witch she once hid behind fear. Fragrance and fashion lines critics mocked as vanity projects generated millions. Her rise wasn't about escaping her past, it was about standing in the rubble of everything she once was and choosing, again and again, to rise. July 2020. 27-year-old Benjamin Kia, Lisa Marie's only son, passed away. Priscilla watched a grief so raw swallow her daughter whole. Lisa Marie clutched a photo of Benjamin so tightly it bent beneath her grip. "Mom, I don't know how to exist without him," she whispered. Priscilla learned a truth she never wanted to learn: losing someone you love is darkness, but losing someone your child loves is a deeper night entirely. 3 years later, January 12, 2023, Lisa Marie attended the Golden Globes, her smile flickering like a candle in wind. 2 days later, she collapsed. At 54, her heart gave out. When Priscilla arrived at the hospital, the corridor lights struck her with sickening familiarity. She had walked this hallway before for Elvis, for Benjamin. A doctor approached, and in his eyes, she saw the verdict before he spoke. Her daughter, her only child, was gone. Today, at 80, Priscilla Presley lives with a grace forged not from ease but from endurance. Her estimated net worth between $40 million and $60 million represents decades of stewardship. She turned Graceland from a vulnerable estate into a global landmark valued at over $100 million. She divides her time between family, Riley Kia, now entrusted with the family trust, Navarone, forging his own path in music, and her granddaughters Harper and Finley in philanthropic work supporting child welfare, veterans, animal rights, and community health. She once said privately that grief never disappears. It simply becomes a room you learn to walk through without collapsing. What her journey teaches us is profound: resilience is not loud, it is steady. Dignity is not inherited, it is chosen. Even the deepest wounds can expand the soul rather than diminish it. Priscilla Presley is not just the woman who loved Elvis. She is the woman who survived losing him, rebuilt his empire, buried her daughter and grandson, and still stands carrying not the weight of what she lost, but the clarity forged by surviving it. Her story proves that your worst moments don't define you. How you rise from them does. What will you do with yours?